Welcome to GAEL Unscripted, where leadership meets learning and real conversations drive real impact. I'm Ben Wiggins, Executive Director of GAEL. Join us as we go beyond the headlines with Georgia's top education leaders. Let's elevate the conversation. Good day, GAEL members, and welcome back to another episode of GAEL Unscripted. Today we have Jay Floyd here with us. Jay's a former administrator, high school principal, and superintendent. Jay, thanks for joining us today.
Ben, I appreciate you having me. I'm kind of looking forward to this, actually.
This is awesome. It is unscripted. He found out literally 5 minutes ago that we were going to do this episode. And so we appreciate Jay for doing that. Well, why don't you tell us, a lot of people know Jay Floyd. They know, some of our new members know Jay as an employee of Strategics and all the work you do with that important organization. But tell us about what were you teaching and how and why did you get into administration?
Well, I actually started my career as a biology teacher, teaching senior level biology at West Rome High School in Rome, Georgia. And because East Rome and West Rome was consolidated, I was also coaching. I was coaching girls track and I was coaching football. And because they were consolidating, then I went back to Carson Newman University and became defensive line coach there and coaching at Carson Newman. But that's actually where I started teaching senior level biology at West Rome. And then after Carson Newman, I went to Dalton High School. I met Bill Chappell. We did a coaches clinic in Gatlinburg every year. And so a lot of the Georgia districts would come, and that's where I met Bill Chappell. And it just so happens that my wife is from Dalton. Oh. And so Coach Chappell started talking to me, and he's like, I haven't added anybody to my staff in like 29 years. And, would you be interested in something like that? I said, well, Mandy's from Dalton, so that's probably what I need to do. So good move. Went to Dalton High School, really enjoyed it. Stayed there about 8 years. And I was coaching, but I also started getting into administration. I moved into a role where I was evaluating energy as energy management. So I took an administrative role as an energy manager for Dalton City Schools. And then in the meantime, I became an instructional supervisor. And so I kind of felt like, hey, this would be a good role for me, moving into this admin type deal. And so an assistant principal at Cartersville High School, and I applied for it, went and interviewed. And so Mike Bryans, who was a principal at Southeast Whitfield in Dalton and Whitfield County, was the superintendent at Hart County. So there's a little bit of connection there to Dalton. And so I went and interviewed with Mike Bryans, and he hired me as assistant principal. Or actually, the principal hired me as assistant principal. So I went to Cartersville. That's how I got into administration.
Well, talk about that assistant principal job. That is a high school assistant principal job is a tough job. It's a lot of moving pieces. I know when I moved into that position, I was shocked at how quickly the day went by. But talk a little bit about some of the great things about being an assistant principal, maybe some challenges.
Well, it was wide open, that's for sure. A lot of things you learn in college they don't teach you about in doing that administrative job. But I think about 90% of it is being able to deal with people. And, and I realized early on, regardless of what responsibilities that I had, that, I had to learn to love the kids, first of all. And if I could love them and that I've had meaningful relationship with them, then I could have an impact. So that's kind of how it grew on me is, hey, I want to do more than just being an administrator. I want to have some kind of impact. And so that's kind of, where it grew. At the time I was doing discipline, but I also was in charge of the attendance office and several other things at the school. And I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the supervisors that we had, and I enjoyed being a part of the administrative team and seeing what I could do to make everything better.
Yeah. I tell you, as assistant principal, you really get some great stories. I mean, the students and staff sometimes too, but the students really keep you entertained as an assistant principal. I used to love to sit around the lunch table in between second and third lunch, and while the administrators would eat very quickly, and we would just share the different stories that had gone on that day.
I could have written a book. I'm telling you, I had some of the most amazing things happen all the way from, parents coming in that you're thinking that they're mad at their kid, and they come in and, you got to get a hold of them because they're fixing to whip them right there in your office, And so there's just all kinds of stories that I could tell that I don't want to get into, but
That's right.
A lot of fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun as assistant principal with my colleagues and other administrators, and you didn't want to draw the short stick and be soccer boy. The soccer games. It became a thing. But now, Mike Bryan's also introduced me to summer conferences. I had not been to a whole lot. We've been to a few. Mike Stanton was my principal in Dalton, and I learned a lot from him. And it's a huge advantage being in administration under somebody that's a Georgia Principal of the Year. Yeah, and
former GAEL president,
Mike Stanton, and so that continued with Mike Bryan's, Dr. Bryan's in Cartersville, and I can remember going to summer GAEL and us having our leadership sessions there and having our executive team meet, and that kind of kicked off the year. I just remember it was my favorite thing to go to GAEL, and at the hotel around the swimming pool, we would have all the administrators there, and it would kind of kick off our meeting every year, and so that was a lot of good times. But shortly after that, I became the principal, and everything kind of changed a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So you became principal at Cartersville High School. That's when I first met you and got to know you. Right. And what year was that, and how many years were you the principal at Cartersville?
Oh, my goodness. It was like 2001, maybe 2002, that I became the principal at Cartersville, and I ended up being the principal there for 12 years. Bibby Morgan was one of the principals ahead of me. He was kind of like my mentor. He was still there working at the board office, and I set a goal that I didn't really say to anybody. I knew Bibby was the principal at Cartersville for 10 years. And I was like, man, if I could be the principal at Cartersville for 10 years, that would be great. Yeah. So I had that, a little bit of a goal, be there that long. And so, but, things really changed because I found out when you sit in that seat, everything is different. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's food in the cafeteria. Everything's coming back to you.
That's right.
So everything kind of changed, and we were very fortunate that we had a great team at Cartersville and a lot of incredible memories. I had great assistant principals. At one time, Ben, I counted. I just kept track of people. Either in a leadership role as a instructional supervisor or assistant principal or, head of a department or something. At one time, I think I had 25 former assistant principals that were at the board office at some board level at some
That's awesome.
capacity. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the neat things about leadership is you get to pour into those that next generation, and then you get to see them, whether they move to the board office as a director or assistant supervisor or principal somewhere. I think that's one of the neat things. So you stayed at Cartersville for 11 years as the high school principal. Yeah. And then what was your next move?
Then I left Cartersville, and Wes Taylor became the superintendent at Lowndes High School in Valdosta. And so I followed Wes. And again, that's pretty hard to do, to go into a high school when the former principal is now the superintendent, and the former principal was also the Georgia Principal of the Year.
That's right.
So I went to
Lowndes.
And
it'd been there a long time.
Been there a long time. And but that was a really good move. My family and I, we had a great time being in Valdosta, and being at Lowndes High School was just an incredible place. But, I look back on it, and I realized there were a lot of things that were happening. Of course, I was growing and I was learning. I felt like God was preparing me while I was at Cartersville. But when I went to Lowndes, I knew that there was a bigger picture somewhere. I just didn't know exactly what that would be, because being a principal at Lowndes High School is a lot different than being a principal at Cartersville. It's I had 9 assistant principals, so you're managing this large organization, large group of people, and I had somebody that came to Lowndes with me to be an assistant principal, and it was Tan Downer. And you and I had talked about this earlier. Was there somebody that had an impact? Tan was an incredible math teacher at Cartersville. I mean, it didn't matter what curriculum we were teaching. Remember, we changed several times during the time.
Yes, we did.
It didn't matter which curriculum we were teaching. We were always at the top in math, and the reason was because Tan Downer was the department chair, but she wasn't only just leading the department, she was training other young teachers when other teachers came in, and we were really just knocking it out of the park. And there were many times, even when I was principal at Cartersville, that I wanted to make Tan an assistant principal, but I was like, man, I'm going to lose her in that math part. That's a selfish thing to say, because I finally learned when I went to Lowndes High School and she came that it was the best move ever. That, not only did I have her, she was going to be training other teachers, and training other teachers in a good way. And she was just amazing, the number of math teachers that she helped develop during that time. And it really made an impact on me. And I look back on it and I was like, man, I should have made her, assistant principal a long time ago. She could have trained some more teachers at Cartersville. Yeah. But, those type of people that you're surrounded with, I mean, and you know this from being a principal, that's 90% of it is making sure that you got the right people in the right places.
Right. Well, you assistant principal at Cartersville, then you become the principal there. You stay there a long time, and then you go to Lowndes. Like you said, you're following someone that's now they're the superintendent. They've been the principal for a long time. A lot of new leaders. They may be listening right now on this podcast, or maybe the next year they're going to find themselves as the principal of a new school. There's a lot of thought and talk and discussion. What do you do as a new leader? You've got to earn their trust, whether you were there at Cartersville as an assistant principal or coming into a new district. How did you go about establishing yourself as the leader and earning the trust of your people?
Well, in any type of leadership role, consistency is the key. And people have to know exactly what they can count on. And, I've always had this philosophy. I learned this the hard way at Cartersville probably, but I also learned it from Mike Stanton at Dalton. But, the fastest form of school improvement is when you hire people. Used to, as an administrator, it really bothered me, like if somebody transferred or if their husband transferred to another location, you lost a teacher. But the fastest form of school improvement is when you hire somebody. Either you got better or you got worse. And so I realized how important that hiring process is to the school district, is making sure that you hire quality people, quality teachers. But at the same time, when you go into a place like Lowndes High School, and then understand, you start talking about the quality of the people, you cannot have school improvement without discipline. And sometimes in today's day and time, you mention discipline, it's a negative word to people. And when I say discipline, I'm talking about, will the kids do what an adult asks them to do?
That's right.
So that was my philosophy going into Lowndes High School was, I got to make sure, number one, that the kids do what adults ask them to do, because we had great kids, we had great teachers. And so I just wanted to be consistent. I wanted to be the consistent person. Now, when you start out like that and you become firm, you've got to realize you got to go through some tough times. But in the end, what you get from that, is worth it, because they say a high school campus changes every 3 years, because it takes you 4 years to graduate. So you've also got to make sure that you stay on top of that. And that's one of the things that I saw at Cartersville was you can't just sit back and relax. Think that we got it going, we're going on right now. No, it takes continually to make sure that everything, and the processes that you set in place, the traditions that you set in place, that those continue, because they could just fade away. Right. And so that was very important to me at Lowndes, was making sure that we had consistency and that the students understood that we love them. I think we came up with a T-shirt, and I've got one of the coaches that had their T-shirt on at practice. I got a really nice picture they sent me. But on the back of the shirt, it just said, "Do you love them enough?" And it was a question. On the front it said Lowndes High School. Do you love them enough? Do you love them enough that you'll do whatever it takes to reach them? Do you love them enough that you'll do whatever it takes to make them make it? That includes, helping them to do what's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the end, when you've got kids that will do what adults ask them to do, then you have a lot of successful people.
That's a great slogan. If I was watching and I was about to become a new principal, maybe the following year, I might steal that slogan. Do you love them enough? I think that just speaks volumes. I think that sets the tone. You talked about the importance of hiring. What were you looking for, whether you were hiring teachers or assistant principals? What are the characteristics, and how did you go about the hiring process?
Well, it really came to fruition when I became a superintendent, and I realized then that I wasn't necessarily the person that was doing all the hiring. Yes, I hired principals, but that was about it. I hired associate superintendents, but I realized that, hey, we've got to make a big deal out of this hiring process, and I've got to train people that are doing hiring, to make sure that we get the right people. And so I just remember all the time asking my principals, "Are you 100%? Are you 100%?" And at first they'd look at me like, 100%. Have you hired 100%? Well, still look at you like, what do you mean have you hired, or did you get 100% better than what you were with the people that transferred or the people that retired? Did you hire better 100%? And so if I knew if they could tell me that, hey, I hired 100% better every year, we were getting better.
You get better.
We were getting better. And so, you find out that going through the process of being an administrator in education, it's all about dealing with the people. Yeah, there was one day that I coached, but then you end up coaching coaches, and then you end up coaching teachers, and then you end up coaching principals.
That's right.
And it's they don't just automatically get this information. There's a lot of experience in 34 years in education, and sometimes you have to learn the hard way. And so I just remember always asking those principals, "Listen, did you hire 100%? Did you get better?" And see, even outside of the hiring process, the current employees that you have, do you have the capability that you can have an honest and open conversation with them, that you've witnessed them teach and you've evaluated them enough that you can help them? It's not about I got you or anything like that. It's about, how can I help this teacher, specific teacher? You got to get it down to an individual level. How can I help this specific teacher become a better teacher? Yeah. And then so if you're always hiring 100%, and then you're helping your teachers to grow and they're becoming better, you're giving them tools. I remember we first put cameras in the classroom. Well, that was just a tool. It wasn't a tool for me. It's not that I wanted to see their classroom, because I think of it as like a coach. What does a coach do? They watch video.
Watch a lot of tape.
All the time. And so I wanted my teachers to be able to look at video. You own it. Nobody else owns it. The only way anybody else is going to see the video is if you give them access to it. Yeah. And so all of a sudden now I got teachers that are looking at themselves in a different way as far as how they teach. Well, the next step was we hired academic coaches. And we hired academic coaches at the central office level. They were not a part of the school level. Yeah. They needed to have a little bit of teeth. So if you put this whole picture together, we're hiring higher quality people. We have a reason for people. That's another thing. That's the superintendent's responsibility, is to establish a culture to where people want to be there. That they want to come there and teach. And if you have a position that opens, you have 50 people that apply because they want to be there. Yeah. And they want to be there because they know you don't have any discipline issues. They want to be there because they know that you have the facilities. They want to be there because they know that you can provide them what they need to be able to teach.
That's right.
And having that camera is one of those. And so you throw in the academic coaches into good teachers, and they start coaching, and the teacher feels comfortable. Hey, I'm going to send this to my academic coach, and what can I do to get better? Then all of a sudden you start looking across the building. It's like, man, we're talking about teaching and learning, you know, all the time. We're talking about teaching and learning, and we're getting better. And then our test scores and our results started getting better. And it's like, you know, it's not rocket science to me. You know, all of that fits together.
It all comes together.
But if you're missing one of those pieces, like, for example, you have a school that has a difficult time with discipline, well, when they go to the next school, they're going to have a difficult time with discipline. So it all works together.
That's right.
My elementary school principals were probably the most important people in the game as far as, you know, having their teachers trained and their teachers, you know, being able to teach at a level that's going to be supportive for, you know, the rest of their education. And so everybody has a role, you know, and they understand that. And they, you know, the principal is the most important person in the school district. And man, I
agree.
I wanted to just pour into the principals. I mean, I wanted to pour as much as I could. But at the same time, you know, I remember having conversations with principals that, hey, you're a good person. I love you. I know your family. I love your family. But you can't do it.
That's right.
You can't get it done.
Yeah, you got to be willing to have those conversations.
That's a tough conversation.
It is. That's right. I think that's one of the things challenging for leaders, especially new leaders, is that they know in their gut. They've looked at the data. They know that a change needs to be made, but sometimes they struggle having those hard conversations. I think that's very, very important.
And nobody's ever had that conversation with them. That's what blew my mind. Even when I was a principal, you know, and you finally get to a point, you know, you call a teacher in and say, hey, listen, I love you. I love your family, but you can't teach, you know, and you can almost see the pressure release off of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying it in a positive way. The pressure released, and they'll do one of two things every single time. They'll come back in the next day and they'll say, okay, what do I need to do to get better? Yeah. Oh, and if they come back in and they say, what do I need to get better? You got a good teacher. That person is fixing to become a good teacher. Right. Or they'll come in and give you resignation. I can't do it.
That's right.
Because the gig's up now.
That's right.
Somebody finally called me out on it.
That's right.
You know,
but I think that's a critical component of being a leader is having those difficult conversations. You know, you mentioned, we're going to transition to you becoming superintendent here in just a second, but you mentioned your academic coaches, which I agree are very, very important. And you made a comment that they were district level academic coaches, not the school. I think your words were so they'd have some teeth. I 100% agree with that philosophy, but talk a little bit more about that. Why do you think it's important for those academic coaches to have that, to be under the district umbrella, if you will, leadership, rather than, hey, I'm the principal and they work for me, answer for me, do whatever I tell them to do?
Well, in my experience, and I got to give some credit to Jennifer Carter, who is the current superintendent of Hart County now. She was my associate superintendent. In my experience, and in her experience also, we had both been a part of academic coaches being at the school level. And it's almost like they just kind of blended in. You know, they when you go to the school level, the ultimate authority is the principal. Yes, bottom line. Yes, assistant principals have authority, but the ultimate authority is the principal. So it's hard to have somebody at the school level like an academic coach that's going to have as much or more authority than the principal. Yep. So our philosophy was they were going to be central office employees because we wanted our teachers to know how important that was to them, that, you know, they could ask teachers to do something, you know, with a little bit of authority. And so the struggle with that, though, is getting them to work on that same level of the teacher, with the teacher not being intimidated or being threatened by that person. And I think once they got to know our academic coaches and they got to know their purpose, you know, and that had the biggest impact, because now I'm taking my classroom camera and my video. Hey, I got this great lesson. Will you take a look at this? Is there anything I need to do better?
Yeah.
And so they would email it to the academic coach. They'd take a look at it and they'd give them feedback. Well, it goes from them sending video to the academic coach and getting better to all of a sudden now I'm sending it across the hall, to one of my colleagues, and we're sharing. It's like, hey, you did a great job teaching this part on sales. Why don't you record that and I'll show that to my class, and they get a great session on sales. So it became this camaraderie, to where we're all kind of working together. We're teaching the same subject. So, you do a great job on sales and I do a good job in this area. So we kind of, work together. And so that's when we started seeing our test scores really just, flourish, where, kids were getting it, man. They were getting instruction, and we were getting high quality instruction. But the theme became, what you hear was everybody's talking about teaching and learning. They're not talking about, well, I got to go do this or I got to go do that. And it was about teaching and learning, and I think it gave them an incredible sense of purpose. That's how they belonged. And then when you hire a new teacher, and when I say a new teacher, I'm talking about right out of college. And when you get those kind of veteran teachers, do you want to hire young teachers out of college that hadn't been tainted, so to speak?
Yeah.
And so when they came into that department, man, they understood, hey, this is the way we operate. And they're getting training from good people.
That's right.
And so that's sustainable. That type of teaching and learning is sustainable.
Yeah. So your principal down at Lowndes, by this point, you've been a principal for a total, how many years? 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I did 11, so I don't know if I could have done 15. That's impressive. And then Hart County Superintendent comes open. I think that's probably a little special place to your heart there, but talk about that whole process, how and why you became a superintendent. Well,
I grew up in Hart County, and my initial thought when somebody called me was, no, I'll never go to Hart County as a superintendent. I won't go back home, because people always tell you in your career, don't go back home.
I won't go back home.
So I had that philosophy. I didn't know why, but people always said, don't go back home. And I was like, no, I'm not going to Hart County. I know how Hart County is. That they eat their own, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just like, so there was a part in my heart, though, that I wanted to go and give back as much as I could, but I just knew that I couldn't. And I loved being at Lowndes. I loved the situation that we were in. I could see myself retiring there. But it was my wife that actually said, why would you not think about doing that? You never know what God's plan is and what he has in store for you. And so we were in church, and we were going to First Baptist Church, Lake Park, and that's where we lived when we were in Valdosta. And the preacher was talking about, God's plan. He was talking about, if you don't do what he asks you to do, he's going to get somebody else to do it. She had her arms folded, and she's looking at me, and I'm like, I'm not looking over there, because I'm not going to Hart County. And then finally, it was like, I got it. Okay, I got it. I need to at least go through the process, and I need to check this out. And going through the process, I fell in love with their board members. It was just an automatic fit. I think they liked what I had to say, and I did talk to them about how tough it was going to be. They did talk to me. Are you going to be able to handle the tough decisions coming back to your hometown and people that and their families, and are you going to be able to handle that? And I accepted that challenge, and I said, I know that's going to be hard. I know it's going to be tough. Yeah. But it's something that I want to do, because I do feel like deep in my heart that I want to, try to give back, so to speak. Well,
that's awesome. And you were able to finish up your career where you grew up, at your hometown, and kind of give back to that community that had poured into you as a youngster growing up.
Ended up being the best thing that I'd ever done. Those 7 or 8 years were just, it was incredible. And the people that I was able to work with, the principals that I were able to have an impact on, the school board. Oh my goodness, the school board was unbelievable, and it just didn't matter, if we had any turnover, or it's like we just, just one unit, and we were just very, very fortunate. And there were a lot of things that we did intentionally, as far as our board training and as far as the direction that we were going. I used, the University of Georgia quite often in helping us establish our strategic plan. And,
Yeah. Is that Carl Vinson?
yeah,
Maybe?
Carl Vinson Institute. We did our strategic plan. And one thing that was big, too, for me was being able to reach the community, and doing surveys with the community to kind of understand what their expectations were. Carl Vinson Institute helped us do that. And so I felt like we were very intentional on all the moves that we made. The building the College and Career Academy was one of the best things that we did, and we kept it on the high school campus.
It's a beautiful building, too.
Yes,
Really
it ended up being an unbelievable thing for our community. I think now, if you go back and count, and it hadn't been that long that the College and Career Academy has been, up and running, but I think we have like 25 or 26 state champions out of that building.
Wow.
In all the different areas. I know the first champions we had, maybe it was the first year, is we won a national championship in video game design. And you see all those schools represented. They're all private schools and all magnet schools. And you got Hart County.
Hart County.
It's like Hart County right here. And so our 4 guys went up there. They were just extremely talented and won a national championship in video game design. And it's like, from that point on, the College and Career Academy, the game was on. It was on,
Talk a little bit, as we get close to winding up this episode. But one of the things I was always impressed about while I was over in Oconee County was watching the graduation rate at Hart County, which speaks volumes to your leadership, but also the total effort that takes from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade.
Well, it's a community effort too, because one of the most important things to me was, what is the connection? What connection does each individual kid? Why are they here? Do they have a reason for being at school? Okay, that changes the game, because now I'm talking to employees. You might be the reason why this kid is coming to school every day. What is the reason, and do we have everything available to them that's going to reach these different areas? Because the kids are different. It might be something totally different that's going to reach one kid that reaches another kid. But, do they have a reason for being at school? And the reason 90% of the time, I believe, is because somebody has a relationship with them, and some adult has a relationship with them. And so when you start having reasons for them to be at school, and that was part of the College and Career Academy, and one of the things that we did as far as graduation was, you had to be connected to an organization. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
You had to be connected to one of the organizations. And then, of course, at the same time, the state says that, you've got to be able to have one of these areas that you specialize in as far as graduation goes. And so that really helped out a bunch. And so when we started giving reasons for kids being at school, and a lot of times if you look at the monthly average daily attendance rate, our high school had the highest average daily attendance rate than even some of the elementary schools. Where elementary school, you don't have an option to be at school. Right. Your kids going to bring you. Your parents going to bring you to school. And so I felt like because of that, that's the reason why we were having success. The kids were at school. They wanted to be at school. They had a reason to be at school. And so that's when the teaching and learning can take place.
That's awesome. Maybe we'll finish it up with this. Just tell us, what is the biggest difference, in your opinion, from going from assistant principal to principal and then into that superintendent seat from a principal perspective? What are the biggest differences in those two?
Well, first of all of my mentors, of course, they were old school. You know, I think I'm an old soul myself, but they were always, do not get into the principalship, the administration too soon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take your time.
Yeah.
You know, enjoy what you do. Do you enjoy teaching, first of all?
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy teaching, you do not need to be an assistant principal. If you don't enjoy teaching, you don't need to be a principal. But if you enjoy what you do, then the right time will come. Same way with the superintendent. My mentors also, hey, do not become a superintendent too early.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, wait till the timing is right. I felt like the timing was right for me. But when you step into that role, you know, as being a principal, and I'd always heard this, but I didn't realize what it meant. You know, sitting in that chair is a lot different. Yeah. And so that's absolutely right, because I saw all the things that I'd never seen before that I was responsible for now. Yep. You know, and some things I knew about, some things I did not know about. So that's a huge challenge. And to me, to be a successful principal, you have to make sure that you go out of your way to get people on board. You know, however that can be. My worst fear was that I was going to be out here marching, buddy, and I'm going and I'm gung ho.
Nobody behind you.
And I turn around and there's nobody there.
That's right.
And so that's kind of where, you know, do you love them enough came from, and you know, how can I get everybody on this same page? Because you know how teachers, they are all different. You could go around and give them $100 bill, you know, and you all going to have one or two going, hey, you tried to buy me off, you gave me a $100 bill. Yeah. You know, that's a negative thing.
Well, why couldn't I get it in 20s?
Yeah. So, you know, the biggest thing with that is you need people and you need great mentors. Amen. I look back across my career and, you know, just people to be able to talk to. One of the best things I did probably at Cartersville was when I became the principal. I started a group that we met on a monthly basis, and they were basically all new principals in that area. Mm-hmm. You know, and we'd get together, we'd go play golf together, we'd just get together and talk. Hey, bring your faculty handbook, and let's all just sit around the table and talk about each other's, you know, look at each other's family. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's somebody out there
somebody's already got it.
There's somebody that's doing some good things. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, having those mentors and just, you know, be able to have conversation with people is huge.
Right. That's right. Well, that's awesome. I think that's a great segue into the importance of GAEL and the affiliate organizations is you do have those mentors and you do have those colleagues. And it's also a reminder for us that are veteran administrators, we need to be pouring into the lives of our newer and younger administrators. And Jay, you were fantastic as a principal. For me, when I was a new principal, I can remember having a conversation with you one time. You probably don't even remember it, but just about a school budget. I had no clue what I was doing with the school budget and how, and you know, because they don't tell you that stuff, and then they hand you the keys, and you're the new principal, and you're too afraid to ask people in your district. And then the same thing when I became superintendent. You were very helpful when I would ask you things about that. You know, people think we get these jobs and that means that we know what we're doing, but a lot of times we have very little clue of what we're doing, and we need those colleagues and mentors like you referred to, and you've been a great one for a lot of people. Well, thank you, Jay, for joining us today.
Appreciate it.
And thank all of you for joining another episode of GAEL Unscripted.
Thank you.